Hey guys, welcome back on my channel. Today I'm doing a different video. It was highly requested and it's essentially me walking you through what's in my book tower. Now I've had this book tower since I moved here because it's just something that I wanted to have as a reminder of one of my pillars. If you haven't seen that video about me trying to recover my pillars, I will link it. But the idea is that there were quite a few things that made my personality and who I am. One of them was my career, one of them was my spirituality, my artistic sense, and all these kind of things. And I just felt that over the past few years I just was in survival mode, trying to make it out there, and so I had neglected some of the other aspects of my life. And so I had to have a book of this tower with like a selection of books that I have managed to bring with me from Morocco, from Belgium, and things that I have bought while I was in the UK. I will walk you through every single one of them and then explain why I got it, whether I have read it or not, and just give you a bit of an overview of what to expect if you're having it. I think that it's nice to do this in January just because a lot of people will probably have some resolutions about books to read and things like that. They're in no particular order, I just have put them up here. So I will just start with this. Made in Japan. It is by Akio Morita. And this is a vintage book actually, so I bought an old book and it was quite difficult to get this, but fine, you could get it from Amazon. It would be very cheap because they don't print it anymore, I guess. And this is the story of the guy who founded Sony, and I thought it was quite interesting because it just shows you how a lot of the things that we take for granted right now, you have all these success stories about people telling you how they created their startups and stuff like that, and I feel like the way it is told is always sensational. Sometimes people will not tell you about the downside until they have completely made it, and in that case you get a dramatized version of whatever failures they had, which is always in hindsight serving a purpose. Anyway, I just don't like the overly scripted success stories of the startups of today. So I just thought, why not think of a startup from a long time ago, which is Sony. And so I just thought it's a nice read to have. It was very inexpensive, and the guy simply explains how he came from a family where he was meant to be making soy sauce. It was a very prestigious family, don't get me wrong, like they are really known in the art and preserving the Japanese heritage. But anyway, he digressed and he decided to go into electronics, and he just explains some little details of how difficult it was for him to get a patent, how he got rejected from a lot of things, what hardship he has seen, how he went into international expansion. So I think if you want to have a bit of that entrepreneurial boost without being fed that overly sweetened startup stories, I think going to something this old is quite interesting. Then I have a few plays by Molière, L'Avare, le Misanthrope, et Le Bourgeois Gentilhomme. I'm not sure I have read any of these, but what happened is that the other day I was visiting a dad in Rabat, and obviously I still have access to that big library, and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to take a few books from there. So he insisted that I take a book back to read it, so I just picked this one. I haven't read in French in ages. Even when I was a kid, I used to read in classical Arabic. I was really good at that. I don't really do a lot in French. So this is a Harvard Business Press. It's called Winning in Turbulence, and it's by Darrell Rigby. That's a partner at Bain & Company. And you will see a lot of books here from Harvard Business Press, just because there was a time when, as I wanted to really make it in consulting and as I really wanted to make it in business, I thought I should invest in these things. But I haven't read most of the books that are in here, because the ones that I have read, I had read 4 or 5, I've left in Morocco. I think I even gifted one of them to one of my mentees. So this is about, in turbulent times, what separates the winners from the losers. I haven't read it yet, but the idea is, how do you actually go through the storm as a CEO, as a company lead, and make sure that something like I don't know, a Brexit, or a stock exchange collapse, or a financial crisis, or something like that, or a gasoline scandal for Volkswagen, how do you make sure that something like that doesn't rock you? So definitely something I want to read. This is one of the latest editions I have. It's the one before last book that I bought. I only got it last month, and it's called Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig. And this is a book about somebody who I think thought of committing suicide and then decided not to do it, and then he just explains how he survived, or how he goes through mental illness, I guess. I haven't read it yet. As I said, it's one of the most recent things I have gotten. And the thing is that the other day, when my friend called me and said, come visit in Morocco, I went there for 14 hours, and I thought maybe my friend is not in a good headspace. And so I thought I would buy one copy for me and one copy for her, and we would read it together. This is something that I usually try to do with my friends. Whenever I feel that a topic is really relevant, I would buy a book in 1, 2 or more copies, and then we try to all read it together. One such book is this, The Four Agreements. It's a Toltec wisdom book, and this is it's a practical guide to personal freedom. It's by Don Miguel Ruiz, and he just took some of the Toltec teachings, and it's one of those spiritual books for life. Again, this is a book where I think I bought 5 copies or something like that. I gave some to my sister, my friends, etc. I had started reading it. I might need to revisit, but the thing is that it's a very, very simple book, and it's one of those things that just helps you ground yourself again and go back into a gratitude mode. So I really like that. Another book that I bought many copies, like this is not even the first copy that I had of it. I don't even know where the original first copy that I had is, but I did buy quite a few of these and gave them around. And this is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, the classic tribute to hope from the Holocaust. I need to thread very carefully with this topic, but sometimes some people might be fed up with all the talk about what happened during the Second World War. I kind of understand it. I understand that there has to be some learnings and then make sure that it doesn't happen again. But of course, it is one side of the story that keeps being told and told and told again. You will notice that any given year, they will make sure there is a movie that references World War II and the Holocaust. I'm not saying that it's wrong, and I'm not saying that it should stop. But I know that a lot of people out there, every time that I would bring something like that, they would roll their eyes because they're like, but there are so many tragedies that happened around the world and that don't get share of voice. Now, if we leave all of that aside, I still think there is some learning from this. You can read this and try to avoid the whole reference to Holocaust, the whole reference to whatever happened in there, and try to get the learnings from it. And it just explains how this guy, who used to be psychologist, was in one of these camps, and how he observed people who survived and people who didn't, and how people who had a sort of faith or spirituality or a sense of hope would actually live a lot longer, and how a lot of death typically happened close to the holidays or right after the holidays, because people realized they were not being freed after for the big holidays in their life and things like that. So it is quite interesting to read if you can put up if you're not okay with the whole Holocaust reference that keeps coming back. It can be a bit tough. So I would thread carefully, because I gave this to a few people. A lot of them liked it. One person actually said it is too dark for me. I'm not in a good mental space to read through it. I think since then he might have read it. That was 4 years ago, right? But just be careful. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to every person, but I know it can grade some people the wrong way, or it can be too dark for whatever mental state you're in. This is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And I haven't read this. It was something that a book that someone gave me. So here's the thing. I was having a discussion with Tim. It's one of my current mentors, and we were talking about how I get my own energy, because the thing is that I'm a bit of a special case because I don't get motivated by money or title or something like that, but I always have my own mechanism of always having positive energy around me, giving it to others, but also giving it to me to keep going, right? And we were talking about that, and he said, you absolutely need to read this book. So I think that the key takeaway is that the way you think about things changes a lot of what happens in your life and how you perceive a lot of events. And I think it has something to do with how you create positive energy around you. So I think this is the one that I want to read first. I'm gonna keep it out here just because, one, I'm on a break right now. I have a couple more days of break, so I really want to read a book. And two, because I just kind of borrowed it, right? So I want to give it back to the person who gave it to me. This is Giuliani's Leadership, and this guy, I think, was the mayor of New York when the 9/11 thing happened. And it's just about, I'm not sure whether he's a charismatic person or not. I wasn't in New York when that happened. But it's about how he led through that crisis. And I think one of the things that I used to do when I was at a previous job was crisis management, and I was a natural at it. But I definitely always kept in the back of my head that this is something I might want to pursue in the future, on a more professional setting and like more full-time. So definitely want to get some learnings from this. I haven't read it yet, but I want to read it next after I read this one. This is the latest addition to my collection. I have only bought it 2 days ago actually, and it's Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah Harari. And I have no idea what to expect, but a lot of my very close group of friends have read it and they all recommended it. He has Sapiens, he has another book and another book, so there are 3 of them. I was thinking of getting it as an audiobook, but then there is something satisfying about a big fat book, so I might actually read that on a plane, like on a long plane ride, but it's not for now. This is not actually a book. It's Life in the United Kingdom, a guide for new residents. So what I had done is that, you guys know I'm really big on visioning, on like, you know, really projecting what I want into the world and then making it happen. And so actually I had bought this book before I had moved to London, before I had started applying to jobs or anything. So what happened is that when I had decided that London would be the city that I wanted to be in, I imagined that I would move there. So I bought this book as a kind of like an omen. In Moroccan, in Darija, we say il fel. So that's why I bought it. To be honest, I have only read through page 11. I never opened it again because I don't need it, but it was just, at the time, it was something that I really wanted to have. Now we get through a series of, no, not everything is business related, but fine. Another one from the Harvard Business Review on brand management. I haven't read it, but this is a very business oriented kind of book. Give Smart, Philanthropy that gets results. Also, again, another thing, a lot of these books I haven't, like most of these books I haven't read, but yeah. So I'm just thinking, so here is the thing. So coming from a country that sometimes is on the receiving end of charity, and also, like, you know how people say, oh, I've been to Switzerland, I've been to Germany, and I've been to Africa, like, what? You just, whatever. So I feel like sometimes people's thoughts on philanthropy are really self-serving. I don't like how people think about philanthropy, and I think that there are a lot of ways to contribute. Not all of them are about handing somebody something and taking a picture and posting it on social media. So I like the deeper philanthropy. Nothing bad about going and painting a school if it makes you feel good. It doesn't make me feel good. The Book of Joy by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. I have read most of it, I think, if not all of it. It is almost like reading a correspondence between two people. So essentially, this is a guy who witnesses the meeting between these two people, and just he recounts everything that they had been saying. These are old friends. Both of them have their own set of wisdom. This is a guy who went through a lot in South Africa, you know, with the apartheid and all these kind of things. And I mean, they were Christian, like he's an archbishop. Archbishop? Like archangel, so it should be archbishop, not archbishop, right? So it's not an arch like an arch in marble arch. It should be an arc like overarching, whatever. Anyway, and then His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So this is a guy who actually is meant to be an embodiment of all the teachings of Buddha, if not Buddha himself. And a lot of people think of him almost like a semi-god. So he's definitely a well-respected person, and he was forced into exile out of his native land. So definitely went through a lot of hardship, and both of them have a very positive, calm, serene outlook on life. And so it's quite interesting to see the discussions that they have on anger, on grief, on a lot of the topics where you just think that some things, why is this thing happening to me? Because both of them have lots of bad things happen to them. So I think it just helps get rid of any anger or resentment that you have built up. So I quite liked it. I also have the book of forgiveness, but I have it as an audiobook. Then this is La Parisienne, Ines de la Fressange. This is not really a book, it's more of a like a style book. I bought it many years ago. I don't remember why, but I bought it, and I like some of the tips in it, but I don't follow them. I mean, she does give some addresses in Paris, etc., but I don't go to Paris. Like, even when I have to go to a concert at Olympia, I actually only go for a few hours. So, like, I'm going in February for that concert that I go to every year, and I will go Saturday afternoon, concert is Saturday evening, and then leave Sunday morning because I can't be bothered with Paris. This is something I also really want to read, and it's one of those books that I want to take on an airplane, long plane ride, probably to Asia. It's From Third World to First by Lee Kuan Yew. This is the guy who essentially made Singapore change from a swamp in the middle of nowhere with no resources to what it is now. To me personally, it's still not super exciting, like as a city. Like, I wouldn't want to go and live there because to me it's quite artificial, almost like a Dubai. But it's quite impressive what he did with that. So definitely worth reading, because then you could draw the parallelism with your life. So from whatever situation you started to something else, it could be a parallel with your career, it could be a parallel with your little startup, whatever. So definitely want to learn some of what he did without having a lot of support to just change the history of his country. Jack Welch, Winning. General Electric was once considered as the biggest factory of world leaders, of CEOs, and so this is one of the guys who is credited for making it what it is. And so I just thought I should read this. I'm not interested in reading it now. I think it might be a while before I read it, but I think if you want to succeed in life, you owe it to learn from some few people. Not all of them have to be with this profile, just because I feel like the stereotype of the white American CEO doesn't necessarily apply to me, and so I will take it with a very massive grain of salt. Like, a guy like this is more relatable to me than a guy like this. Teaching the Element to Dance, Empowering Change in Your Organization by James Belasco. So I haven't started reading this, but it is more about how do you implement change in an organization. You know how people always resist it, especially the older people or the more established ones or the legacies. And this, again, it applies to your life, it applies to your company, it applies to a country if you want to look into their politics. So I think that some of the learnings from here would be quite useful if you want to challenge the status quo in whatever part of your life where you think that people take things for granted and have the whole we've always done it this way mentality. We're almost there, I promise. Lots of business books and then one quite special one. Founder's Mentality. Again, a Harvard Business Review Press. This is a book about how do you go from... So the thing is that a lot of companies, when they start, they have that startup mindset, right? Then they grow and then they become successful and then they start to diversify, and just at one point they realize that they have lost the essence of what they initially were. So how do you actually maintain that nimble way of thinking, that, you know, scarcity mindset, that innovation need, when just the same as when you had just started, if you are now a multi-billion-dollar company? So how do you revive that founder's mentality? That's a bit the idea of the book. Decide and Deliver, 5 Steps to Breakthrough Performance in Your Organization. That's just a book that I have received. Time, Talent and Energy, another Harvard Business Review Press thing. This is more about one of those fluffy books about how do you maintain, how do you optimize your time, how do you retain your talent, how do you preserve your energy. And you could read the 5-hour workday, you could read a lot of books that are along these lines. I don't necessarily believe in that, but I'm curious as to what people think. And so another book is The Breakthrough Imperative, How the Best Managers Get Outstanding Results. And that's, for me, is more something that I would consider if I were to start my own company, and just know that there will be a time when I have to delegate, and how do I make sure that people actually do what I want them to do. And especially that now you have less time than ever to make an impact. Things move so fast, so how do you get to a breakthrough? That's quite something I would like to see. This is a book that, well, initially I looked into when I was thinking of going into private equity. Not into private equity, but more like I was thinking I'm going to do a lot of due diligence and stuff like that. So this is called Mastering the Merger, 4 Critical Decisions That Make or Break the Deal. I might still revisit it. I have still not worked on the due diligence, but I might need to read that. This is Gibran Khalil Gibran, and it is one of the guys who wrote in English, but I think that the translations in Arabic would be quite interesting. So because when I grew up, like when I was a kid, I used to read a lot of this stuff in classical Arabic, I just thought I would revisit it one day, and so definitely when I revisit it, I might eventually read it in English, but there is something special about reading it in classical Arabic, like very clean classical Arabic. So this is my book tower for now. What I typically do is that if I travel, like, my books are not really things that I keep, so I always give books around and stuff like that. I always buy books. So this tower will probably change in a few months as I give some books to my sister, to my friends, as I buy new ones. But that's what I have on my current reading list, and I can't wait to get started with it. Now you know what I have in my book tower. I will reconstruct it now and then get started on reading something. Probably this. I will see you very soon on my channel. Take care.